Welcome to today's PALS MicroTraining, Train the Trainer. I am Rebecca Duchette with Nemours Children's Health, and today our topic is physical activity with infants and toddlers. We're really glad you've joined us today, and I want to give a shout out to my colleagues on the call today, Trevor Lee, Hannah Press, and Khaleesi Hope that will be assisting and monitoring the chat, and just really glad to have you guys here with us today. Let me get my slides up and we will get started. All right, so our session today is on infant toddler physical activity. This is our newest micro training that was developed over the summer for some work we did with another partner. You'll notice this is a similar intro slide as you've seen on all the PALS trainings where you can add your information and your trainer logo. This work today is funded by the CDC through the Association for State Public Health Nutritionists. This slide will be in your materials as well. We just like to acknowledge that the funding is through the federal government, through CDC, and the opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the opinions of the CDC or the US government.
Rebecca, can I pause you? We lost the share screen, I
Oh,
believe. Did other
thank you.
folks lose it too? Okay, just making sure it wasn't just me.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I don't know what happened. Here's our goals today for our Train the Trainer. Am I back up? Okay, perfect. Thank you. We want to familiarize you with this session content. We are not going to make you subject matter experts on infant toddler physical activity, but we do want to provide you with some materials to get some training going with folks and feel confident and comfortable facilitating discussions around infant toddler physical activity. And just overall increase your preparedness to work on this subject matter with programs. We will have a couple trainer talks put through here today, and we really would like to hear your opinions. If you want additional materials or resources, if you're concerned about some areas of the training or how it might be facilitated, please raise it. If someone else has this question, if you have it, somebody else probably has it too. So please don't hesitate. We'll also ask any thoughts you have around facilitation techniques, provider challenges, or anything else you want to bring up. We are adding a group norms to this session. We encourage you to do this to your slide deck and materials. And have a few things on the slide. Welcome you to use the chat to add group norms that are important for you. So thinking about being considerate of others, we ask you to remain on mute unless you are speaking, but we do encourage you to come off mute when you want to speak. Raise your hand, let us know. Throughout the session today, please use the chat and react to others' posts. Use those heart emojis and everything that are by the 3 dots, or maybe your favorite fruit or vegetable, whatever you want to do to react, but react to folks' thoughts in the chat. We also invite you to turn on the camera as you're comfortable. I know a lot of you guys know each other. We've been on calls together, and it really is nice to create a sense of community, seeing faces and interacting each other. As I've said before, I know how much subject matter expertise and trainer facilitation expertise we have on this call. So really do hope that you will share your wisdom with the group. And then also, like I said, ask questions as we go through things today. There is a facilitator guide for this session that is already up on our website. We're so excited. It is the link was in the materials that we sent you with Zoom, so it is there for you to download. In that guide, you're going to find the information, the basics to enter into your PD systems, whatever they may be in your state. Some of your states, your state lead does that, so that's not on you, but some states I recognize individual trainers have to enter that information. If you need anything else that you can't figure out, please reach out to us and we'll help you there. There's some information on adding things that are specific to your state. This is a good one to do that because most states have something in their licensure around infant toddler physical activity, and maybe just that they need to go outdoors every day. But it's a great opportunity just to raise awareness of that and how it ties into your content. We have in there, like we always do, a training agenda that helps you break down how we think it might play out based on your group size. Recognize that that can vary greatly depending on how many people you have. You'll find slides with suggested speaker notes. And again, we don't suggest you read those. We suggest that you read through them, put them in your own words. Maybe there's other aspects of the content on the slide that you really want to hone in on, and we welcome that. What is in those notes is just kind of how we envision what we would convey to participants, but really welcome you to use your expertise there. The handouts are there. For our folks in Alabama and other states that need pre-post questions, those are there for you. Don't use them if you don't need them, unless you're really into that pre-post thing. Some additional resources and activity ideas are also in there. So now we jumped into our training slides. We have 4 objectives for this session that are on the slides. We want to think about the benefits of physical activity for infants and toddlers, increase understanding of how they develop, motor skills develop. We are going to go through the milestones for children from birth through 30 months and think about how caregivers can really nurture those skills and the development of those skills. And lastly, we're going to build awareness of quality resources and active play for infants and toddlers. Many of you will recognize these from other PALS sessions. We put them in here for providers with some additional ones for infants and toddlers, and want to raise awareness in this session that these materials are also great for families and for providers to really make that connection with families around the skills they should be seeing in their children as they progress along the trajectory of motor skill development, and how they can support the development of those skills. We start off this session with a short video that is baby Liv learning how to turn over. And we're going to ask our participants just to really hone in what they notice on the video as they watch baby Liv, and ask them to be prepared to share something at the end. And I'm going to ask you guys to share it in the chat. You're welcome to share as it goes through. Love all the love on the screen for baby Liv. What stood out for you? And I'll invite you to come off mute if you want to.
I noticed she was first trying to find her, I guess, point of contact. Like, well, first she was like figuring out the hands and then the feet and then like tap the ground a little bit. Then like, oh, okay. Then you saw her feet going more and more like, oh, okay. So she felt secure, I believe. And then she felt like she could make her next move.
Thanks, Tina. Really well said. She felt secure. Um, Great stuff in the chat here. On the move, tummy crawl, step by step, how the skills got refined with practice, patience, determination, exploration, pride, joy. Slow, then she got moving faster. Awesome. So in the facilitator guide, it suggested you would use this sort of as your icebreaker for folks to introduce themselves and kind of share what they saw, um, what they noticed, what they pull out, and there's so much rich stuff in the chat here. Really paying attention to all the small steps that get overlooked. Yeah, it takes a lot of time on the ground and on hard surfaces to develop the motor strength for her to turn over or him to turn over the baby in the video. It takes a lot of time. And those skills build on the next skills. Did you notice when baby Liv, after she'd been practicing for a while and the word said she takes a rest, how rapidly she was breathing? You could see her little tummy going up and down. That is physical activity for infants. It is hard work. And if you've ever had an injury where you had to do physical therapy, you may remember that sometimes it's the little things that really wore you out the most. All right, we're going to jump into our first objective. I'm going to turn it over to Hannah to get us started on objective 1.
Thank you, Rebecca. So our objective 1 is to identify and understand 2 benefits of physical activity for infants and toddlers. I know all of us know that physical activity is beneficial to people of all ages, and researchers continue to find more and more benefits to being physically active, not just to our physical health, but to our social, emotional, and mental health. And so this objective in this section here shares several health benefits of physical activity for children, and we'll also discuss the link to physical literacy. Next slide. So the importance of active play. As we all know from PALS, early physical activity experiences shape children's habits and preferences that influence the activity levels throughout their life. You may be familiar with this image on the right that's from CDC that shows how physical activity impacts the entire body, from increased bone density and strength to improved attention and memory. And for infants and toddlers, active play is that chance to engage with caregivers, and it provides opportunities for them to build social emotional skills as well as contribute to their motor skill development. When you're with your participants, you can prompt them to ask which benefits they notice in the children that they care for after active play, if any of them specifically on this document really resonate with them. And it's also available as a handout to use if you're training in person. Next slide. So during this section, we're making the connection between active play and physical literacy. And on the slide here is the definition of physical literacy that you can read aloud, or you could give your participants a few minutes to read it themselves and reflect. I'll go ahead and read it for us today. Physical literacy is the ability to move with competence and confidence in a wide variety of physical activity in multiple environments that benefit the healthy development of the whole person. So what does physical literacy mean for young children, and how does active play support it? That physical literacy begins in early childhood. It really begins in infancy, and it continues to grow over time as children have different opportunities to engage in different kinds of active play and to build those skills. Really, we want to create opportunities for children to become comfortable moving in different settings and really feeling confident in their own movement, because we know that you need to practice it to become proficient. We saw little baby Liv, right? She kept practicing, and then finally when she became proficient, she was able to flip with ease. So the caregivers help children learn to move with that competence and confidence by providing them with the opportunities to practice skills in different environments, and also focusing on the fun and joy of movement. So again, saying how can caregivers promote that physical literacy? They play this key role because infant and toddlers are completely dependent on the adults in their lives to have opportunities to engage in movement. And the interaction between caregivers and infants and toddlers is really important to support children to practice and develop those skills. By caregivers giving children affirmations and creating opportunities for them to practice these skills, the children can develop that confidence and competence. And those are those key elements that we were talking about physical literacy. So on the slide, there's some additional ways that caregivers can promote physical literacy, like setting up environments that are safe, actively supervising, and engaging in play with the children. This is another place that you can choose to lead a group discussion and ask your participants, ask them how they support active play and physical literacy within their own environments. Back to you, Rebecca.
All right. So through this next section, we're focused on understanding how fundamental movement skills develop. And you guys will recognize some of this content from PALS itself. We have a brief slide here on these fundamental movement skills and really thinking about what they are and how they develop. And one thing we want to kind of build on here is how skills build on each other. So before a child crawls, they're rolling, and they're before they creep, they crawl, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But they really have to build on skills. So the past skills lead to the next one, and that skill builds upon the next one. So we're really thinking about when we learn a new skill, our brain builds neural connections. And the more we practice that skill, the more refined the movement gets, the stronger the connections are in our brain. And so that's like ties into what Hannah was just sharing about lots of experiences and practices to get proficient in skills and have that competence and confidence. Part of that is the neural connections in our brain. So there's that fundamental movement skill piece. And then we take one skill and we really think about how that happens in young children. So we have on the slide crawling and creeping. So we saw baby Liv doing both of these in our video. Crawling is the movement when the baby's belly is on the ground, and the baby may pull or push forward on their knees or elbows. I think of this as, we used to call it an army crawl, like a low crawl, and that's kind of what they're doing. They may use one or both arms. They may only use one limb when they first start and then move on to more. Not all children go through these two motor skills. Some children just skip both, and some will only do one. But these are skills that usually appear somewhere around 9 months. Creeping is when they are up on their arms and knees, like we see in the lower slide. The belly is up off the ground. But the crawling builds the muscles and strength along the back and neck to really support the next skill of creeping. When they're creeping, they're coordinating their arms and legs to move together, and more aware of where their bodies are in space. So obviously, to develop both these skills, kids need a lot of time on hard surfaces. And somebody wrote in the chat, I really valued this comment, how important that contact is with a hard surface for movement to develop these skills. And, many children don't go on the ground enough. They're in containers large parts of the time, as we know from our PALS training and our work with providers. So getting kids out of containers is really important. The next part of our content, we're going to walk through the motor milestones from birth to 30 months. And one of the things we're wanting to think about with our participants is how they nurture their skills, how they set up their environments to promote these skills. I think this next objective is a great opportunity to really milk the wisdom of your participants and what they see and what they do, and allow as much discussion as you can to really let them learn from each other around these things. So you're going to recognize, again, some of this from your work with the CDC milestones. So what we've done for each of the age groups is pull out the skills that we expect to see at, and again, the milestones are a range, right? 2 months is sort of the middle of when we expect these to appear. And they may appear a little bit later, but we want to think about supporting, the 2-month-old skills. How can we do this at 1 month to get them ready for 2 month? And we'll walk through each of these. So we see here on the slide, the 2-month skills. And we can spend some time here thinking about how developmental domains are all intertwined. And so if we think about the child's social emotional development in this time, having a caregiver on the ground with her to interact with her and encourage her to look up will encourage those physical skills too. It's all intermeshed, that she's developing trust with that provider, she's engaging, she's curious about the conversation that's happening, and that's going to encourage those motor skills that develop. We have embedded some videos here from the CDC from their website. They are in the PowerPoint presentation. You can also, we'll find in the notes, the links are there as well. Most of them do not have any sound, but it's just an opportunity to review what this looks like and talk with folks about what they see in their programs. Again, here is a slide for you to get folks thinking about what they do to develop the skill around 2 months old, thinking about what we saw, the skills we saw, providing many opportunities for them to be, for awake infants to be on the floor, the ground, inside or outside, tummy time. And then we saw the toys and the impact of interesting toys. We did not see with Baby Liv in our video engaging, interacting with others, but I can imagine the person behind the camera and other adults in the room are really encouraging that movement and supporting it and cheerleading what was happening there. Four-month-old skills here, similar to 2-month, kind of review what's going on at 4 months, what we're looking at. We'll see these skills if the child has spent time on a hard surface. If a child has spent a lot of time in constraining, confining equipment, where we are less likely to see these skills. The next video is a very, very short one around a child, a 4-month-old, holding their head steady with support. And you can see he's still a little bit bobbly there, right? But he's getting there. Fun to see. Of course, the videos are optional for you to use, but I think it can help some providers really recognize what they see in their own environments, to see a short video of it and then be able to bring things to the conversation. So here's our 6-month skills. Similar, you have notes to support you around that. At 6 months, but we have this infant babbling to communicate, which supports, again, the development of cross-skill development and encouraging her to do different things. And we put this in here as a group discussion for you with your participants to think about what activities they can do to support these 6-month skills. There are 3 responses in your trainer notes for you to share if your participants kind of need a jump start to get the conversation going. And again, similar thing. We do this with 9 months. Here are your 9-month motor milestones. Some infants are crawling by now or creeping, as we mentioned when we were talking about the fundamental movement skills. And some children go straight to the cruise. They straight to pulling themselves up and walking along pieces of equipment. And we don't consider it a developmental delay if they don't creep and crawl, because again, some kids just jump those. There are, again, some ways for you to have conversations around the strategies caregivers can use to help the infants to develop these skills listed, such as rolling balls, stacking blocks, outdoor time in swing strollers and on the ground, pedaling legs during diaper changes. And I'm sure your participants will have rich ideas around how they do this and what they do, and how they spend time on the ground with children. For 1 year, here are our skills that we expect to see developing around this time: pulling to a stand, the cruising, picking up things between their thumb and pointer finger, which we know as the pincer grasp, but picking up small things. And again, this starts as a fine motor skill. It is a fine motor skill, but it leads to a gross motor skill of catching because it's developing the strength in the hands to build into that skill. Oh, I love this comment in the chat. Lietha, do you want to share any more about that? Stephanie is not saying that babies are growing and progressing in their milestones earlier. So it's just interesting to see, you know, some people are seeing it earlier and Stephanie is not seeing that. Thanks, Monica. Yeah, the fine motor skills leading into gross motor skills is interesting. Um, here's our 1-month-old, and there's a list of things as well. How can we promote motor skills with 1-year-olds? And what are activities that providers do in their classrooms, and we've given you a list of things there to kind of get some discussion going. As you can see, this session is a little bit different from some of our others because we're really want to getting participants to kind of share their experiences and talk with each other. And I expect some of the things will come up will also be challenges that they experience in their environment or needs related to equipment that can lead to, you know, some brainstorming and problem solving as a group. Sorry, we'll do a brain break first. So this is built in here. This one is not a super active one like you've had in PALS, but it's a resource from Kiddo that we're wanting to get folks familiar with this other great resource out of Western Australia. And they have some lovely videos around teaching different skills. This would be a skill for toddlers, catching. So I invite you to watch the skill. Maybe you want to move along. Maybe you want to get your participants to move along. But think about the way that they're helping children become proficient in this skill. All right, what did you guys notice? I love this tip. The ball's up high, and if the ball's down low, wiggly worms. Yeah, butterfly wings, I like too.
I liked how there was the rolling of it as well as the catching things out of the air. So the different ways that catching can be done.
No, Katrina, you're right. Those are not toddlers. They're older than toddlers, but I think it can demonstrate the way, I like the video because it demonstrated the way the adults can like help toddlers, even the handling behind the head, under the legs, just that manipulation of the ball between things that would lead to a catching eventually. They did look like they were having fun, Demi. Oh, great point, Karen. They were crossing the midline. Thank you. Using different core muscles. Awesome, Casey. All right. So again, you're welcome to pick a different brain break. Whatever you choose to do is great in your sessions, but encourage you. We are at about the midpoint, a little bit past, to give folks some time to have a break. All right, Hannah, now to you.
Alrighty, so for our next age group here, we have the 15-month-olds and 18-month-olds. So for 15 months, a lot of little ones are starting to walk independently, and talks about how caregivers can encourage the walking skills by providing equipment, maybe like push toys that help practice the balance and the steps, or taking children outside and walking on different surfaces like grass, play surfaces, in addition to harder ground indoors. And then by 18 months, children are typically exploring their environment as they're climbing. They're really using those skills that they've been honing, like balance, hand-eye coordination, and strength. And really the caregiver's role about setting up the safe spaces to be able to climb safely. Supervision is really important, whether that's inside, maybe using foam blocks, or outside play, climbing on rocks or logs, those opportunities to be able to continue to build those skills and allow for the exploration that comes along with climbing. So on this slide, or talk about the 2-year-olds. For 2-year-olds, there's lots of new motor skills that are emerging. They're full of energy, need lots of time to run and play inside and outside. They're continuing to develop that balance and spatial awareness. So they might be falling or running into things that could be quite common. And really for those 2-year-olds, about providing ample opportunities for that active play in open spaces for those 2-year-olds. So the last motor milestone that we're sharing in this training is 30 months. And a child at 30 months is quite active, as they are all the way up to this. But the notes highlight some of the other skills and milestones, like the cognitive skills, like playing pretend or following 2-step instructions, as well as some of the physical, like the kicking or throwing balls. One skill here that the video demonstrates is the milestone of jumping with 2 feet. And as you can see, yeah, a jump requires a lot of steps, right? There's bending the knees and squatting, swinging the arms, pushing off to get off the ground. It requires that strength, balance, and coordination, things that we've been talking about throughout these milestones. So as you can see, those opportunities to practice, and then helps them develop and get to the point where they can do this 2-footed jump skill. And also is an opportunity to think about other ways to encourage children to jump. Maybe that's pretending to jump like frogs or rabbits, or if there are some lines on the floor that children can practice jumping over. I'm sure the providers will have lots of ideas about how they encourage jumping for the children that are in their care. So this slide here contains the information from PALS trainings on the recommended practices for physical activity in EC settings. And it's really just to underline that the optimal physical activity practices support the children in developing the motor skills and reaching those motor milestones. So I know we spend a lot of time talking about tummy time and how the tummy time, that's a recommended practice for infants, prepares them to be able to slide on their bellies, to be able to build the strength to crawl, and then build the strength to be able to pull themselves up and then walk and be more active and engage. Then as they get older, in that moderate to vigorous physical activity as in the toddler 2 area. So, just again, recommend the recommended practices in ECE and how opportunities for activity help support those motor milestone development. Here's an optional summary slide for that third objective, really recapping the caregiver roles in supporting skill development, providing those safe spaces, different equipment that children can enjoy. We talked about, providing equipment for children in various ways, engaging in play with them, providing opportunities for play across the day, and really practicing that responsive caregiving to help children feel safe and supported and have that confidence to try and continue to practice those new skills, which we know is so important in the development of physical literacy. So while we just discussed the motor milestones that children should reach between birth and 30 months, Rebecca had alluded to this, that we understand that children develop at different paces, and those milestones are kind of, a middle ground. So some children may walk at 10 months, others may walk at 15, and both are totally okay. And there are a lot of reasons that children may not meet the milestones on the checklist. Some delays might be because there's a lack of opportunity for movement. If children are put in confining equipment for a long period of time, or they might have just less experience using and practice using their bodies, so that once they have more tummy time on the floor, they'll often catch up quickly. But we wanted to highlight this in the content here because it shares some examples of what physical developmental delays could look like if a child is used to be able to do a skill and maybe no longer is able to do that skill, or doesn't move their body like other children their age. The point that we're really trying to drive home here is that acting early on developmental delays can make a big difference. And the goal is to really catch where there might be a developmental delay early and connect families to the services that can offer that individualized support for their children. So here's another slide on identifying developmental motor delays. We know that EC providers and families are with children more than anybody else, so that they play that important role in ensuring that children that might not be meeting the motor milestones get the support they need. We are highlighting 2 different resources here on the slide. On the left is from the CDC's milestone checklist, and the right is an interactive list of developmental skills from the American Academy of Pediatricians. And what I like about the one on the right one is that it's interactive and you can really visualize what the typical development and what a delayed development might look like. And it also has some tips to start conversations with pediatricians. So this can be a great resource for providers to be able to share with their families. One thing to note is that we don't use the checklist to diagnose developmental delays, but it's really just about identifying if a child might need support in reaching that milestone, and encouraging families to seek out helpful services. Again, this could be a great slide here. It has some different options. If there are developmental concerns, this could be a great slide to add information on maybe local resources or services that are available in your locality or state to be able to support families. And I think we'll pause here for a trainer talk so that we can take a moment to check in about everything that we had just talked about. I'm curious if anybody has any questions about the content or thoughts on how you might facilitate with folks in your areas.
Just thinking like of the micro trainings. I'm a network coordinator, so sometimes we think about like having like micro trainings within our community meetings. And I was just thinking I'm going to talk to my coworker about us incorporating some of these, you know what I mean, into the meeting for our providers. So just another way to use the information and get it out there.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. That's a great idea.
Mhm.
And with these materials, because they're created with federal dollars, you can always pull these slides and put them in other trainings and put them in other, maybe you're just going in to do a lunch and learn, but you want to hit on a couple key things. Feel free to pull stuff from this. It's great if you attribute us, but give us credit. But if you don't, that's, we're not going to know. We really want the information to get out there to folks and for it to be useful to you and your work. So thanks for sharing, Tina.
Okay, and I'm glad you said that because sometimes, you don't know what you can use, what you can't, and if it's just for you, only when you give it to us to use it. So, okay,
Yeah.
thank you for clearing that for me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Rebecca. Um, if we are doing a session that is required to be 2 hours by the organization, do you see another micro training that blends well with this one?
Ooh, that's a great question, Stephanie. I think we have a training on physical activity with mixed age groups that might be useful because
That's
that
kind of
includes
what I
it.
was
Yeah.
wondering.
Mhm. I think too the one on outdoor activity settings because I do think you might tweak that one a little bit to really focus on infants and toddlers, but I do think there's some providers that are amazing getting kids outside and do that really well, infants and toddlers. But I think there are still some programs out there that really struggle with that outdoor time if the weather is just not perfect. So activity settings and kind of thinking about how we create settings for infants and toddlers could be useful to you.
And
Thank
there
you.
are also a few slides at the end of the physical activity in small spaces that have a few options for, I believe it's toddler focus, but, pull a few slides from here, a few slides from here, and that could get to the 2 hours.
Oh, great question, Stephanie. Thank you.
So Rebecca or Hannah, just a question, like to extend this, could doing more parent shares, project work, activity work, and like giving them more time, like I think about the milestones and cutting them up and having them, what age group is the milestones and things like that. So extending maybe some of those activities and pulling from some other trainings, that would be okay as well.
Sure, that's great, Carrie. Yeah, I think more hands-on stuff is, people right now, all of us, I think, we just need more time to connect and build relationships and do hands-on things. So please, that sounds great. I see Emily's quote in the or question or comment in the chat. I've been trying to facilitate more conversation and brainstormings, but I got a lot of talk centered on the problem and then crickets when I ask them to come up with possible solution. Any tips on facilitating this further? Um, Maybe instead of talking about brainstorming, maybe that's like it would be better to get somebody to share their story about how they do this and what does this look like in your program? How do you do this? I don't know. There's so many of you guys I'm looking at that are like amazing and have done a gazillion trainings. So please come off mute and help us on this one.
A lot of times with different questions like you might want to ask during some of these type trainings, I would consider having small group conversations, especially if you're in person. Having small group conversations, some people might be more comfortable with just talking 2 or 3 people rather than talking, to the entire group, and then have a share out at the end. That might be helpful.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, whether in person or virtual, kind of those smaller breakout rooms, but then set it up of maybe here's the scenario and how does the small group come up with different ways to address the whatever the scenario or the challenge is. And that's what they're gonna share.
Yeah. Thanks, Carrie. That's great.
I was going to say hit the same thing. It's usually dependent on my group. I kind of know the regulars that come, and they'll come with their group and things like that. So I kind of know if I need to break it up into something small so I can talk about it first and then be prepared to share. Um, but if I am just winging it in my training, usually if I ask them how they do it, then they will be open to sharing how they do it instead of me telling them and giving them strategies and things first.
Excellent point. Yeah, totally.
I do know that when you do an activity and you're done with the activity, all of a sudden the participants are like, well, I do it this way and I do it that way and I do it this way, and all that conversation seems to start without me even having to do anything.
Nice. I want to call out Casey's comment in the chat around sensory hoops. I actually went to a training where we made those in Kentucky, and it was really fun. And people had the takeaway of the hoop to do with infants, and they're adorable, and not a huge expense if you have a little bit of funding.
I did just share another one too for the ribbon activities, which is actually way more budget friendly, especially if you have a larger group. But the ribbon wands were a blast. And I think like the providers were kind of like, oh, I never thought to use them for infants. And we just made them on little rings. I actually used it on like a very loose hair tie, more like a scrunchie, not like an elastic. And we talked about how you can put it on their ankles and you can put it on their wrists, and obviously like using safe lengths and supervision. And but it was really fun. So I just figured I'd share those.
Thanks, Casey. That's awesome. All right. That was a great discussion, guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to push us forward. We'll have a little bit of time at the end, but I want us to get through our last objective. So you will have seen all the content. As I mentioned, Objective 4 is around these quality resources and things that providers may be aware of, but really hoping to raise awareness of connecting with families about these materials too, and hoping to build that connection between providers and families around their child's motor skill development. So you'll recognize the tummy time moves from PALS on the right. Pathways also has a brochure that's on the left there for families. That's really nice too. And again, as providers are working with families, they could send this out in a group chat. They don't have to print anymore. I think maybe they want to do one for the bulletin board, but share the link and get folks thinking about their baby's tummy time. Again, from PALS, you'll recognize the app, the milestone app on the left, and the one pagers that are just so clear, and they do have the great connections between the developmental milestones, motor skills, and all the different ones, developmental domains. For this session, the handout we use is also from the one for the physical activity with mixed age groups. So you'll recognize that, but because we love the list of infant and toddler things, we decided to reuse that as an optional handout for folks. And this is something they can share with families as well. As always, we suggest if you are training in person to print a copy that can be passed around the room and people can actually touch it and look at it, because that's going to raise awareness and familiarity with the resource and actually may encourage them to use it with folks if they see it and see value in it. This next one is just a website. It is Active for Life, which is one of our favorite resources for early childhood physical activity. And you can see on the top in the bar on the left, I've put an age group 2, and then the skill want to be practicing on the catch, and it generates a list of different activities that caregivers or families can do with a child to help practice that skill. Active for Life also has lesson plans for infants and toddlers that teachers could really capitalize on if they're interested in it. Bubbles, these are from Be Active Kids, the bubbles and cardboard box handout. This is from Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina. And Trevor, thank you so much. He's putting links to things in the chat if you want to do some copy and pasting. The links are also in the facilitator guide. These are one pagers. There's probably 24 of these of physical activities with low cost materials, and many of them are in Spanish. Not all of them, but many of them are. The last resource we have that we have a slide for is from Kiddo, the University of Western Australia, and there's different activities here for infants and toddlers that you can see on the slides: hopping, tummy time, grasping, rolling, balancing. That can be useful to show the videos or just watch the materials or download the resources as well. So that is the last of the content. We have a recap slide built in for you around our 4 objectives, and just to raise if there's any discussion. And then the notes suggest a large group discussion, or just as Callisti shared, having a small group, getting them to brainstorm and have something to bring back to the big group about what they're taking away from the training. You know, what resonated for them, what's one thing they're going to leave and use in their practice. There is a question and discussion slide for folks as well for you to use. And that is the end of the session. Wanted to spend just a minute thinking about facilitation strategies. And you guys brought up some great things about making the training shorter, making the training longer, adding some more hands-on activities to use with your participants, adding state-specific content, and please do that for the resources too. If your state has great, and Casey's in the middle of my screen right now, but Maine has such great resources around winter kids, outdoor stuff, you know, put links to what is available for providers in your state. Add that stuff, because, you know, we really want to promote what they're already hearing about if we can. Yeah. You guys have been like exemplar using the chat today. I think it's been amazing to read it. There's so much rich stuff there. And if you get a group like this, really welcoming it can be, you know, calling out the things that really are awesome. There was so much in there today. So co-facilitation too. I can't say enough for that. It's just the best. If you can find somebody with you and a moderator, Trevor, we can do any of it without you. We do have a brief feedback survey. We'll put the link in the chat. We appreciate your input on things. The session as it is a 60-minute session, but like we said, you can kind of do with it what you want to. We are working on 2 more micro trainings for you this year. One of them is active play in hot weather. The other one is physical activity in the garden, because so many of you are working on gardening. We are looking for some folks to be on an advisory committee with us. It would require a few hours of your time in January. So if you are interested in sharing your expertise with us, please give me an email and I will add you to our advisory committee. That concludes everything today. We'll open for questions though. So I'm going to stop sharing and ask you if you have questions or anything to share, to please share.